in America, they had the influence of the Afro former slaves. You know, in England, as far as I know, they didn't have slaves in England, or hardly, as far as I know. But in America, of course, they had a much, there was a big proportion of the population were slaves, you know, Afro-Americans. And so they, of course, they had a much bigger influence than on this culture, because this shuffle, so to speak, this shuffle population was also living there in the USA, whereas but not in England. So, but nevertheless, this Beatles, this rock, it had evolved more, I would say, in England than in America. In America, you had okay, you had Bill Haley, and that was a rather white, I would say, rather white rock and roll. And you had Elvis Presley, who was a bit closer to gospel, is true. But then, but these were the only whites for a long time, I would say. Then they made this kind of rock music, rock and roll music. But this whole what became the worldwide known as this rock was involved in England. No, it was by all the, like I mentioned already, Manfred Mann, King's Who, Led Zeppelin, Dire Straits, and so on. It's all these in a culture which had not been such influenced by African Americans in their population. So it was more like a German culture. How does that evolve? Yeah. That is something which is I cannot understand. And how it also sustained. You know, okay, you may have had it for 10 years or so, but it sustained. It determined the entire British culture. And it has never, of course, the Germans also enjoy rock music, but it has never determined our German culture to this extent as it in England. So that is something how a guy like Mick Jagger, or who had, as far as I know, no relations with Afro Americans or Afro people from Africa. No, he was a middle, as far. Mick Jagger, are you a middle class guy? Yes, I guess you are. And similarly as John Lennon or Paul McCartney. No, these are guys who are more like in German, like me. No, or Eric Clapton or these guys. They are white British middle class, I would say, or maybe even upper class, Brian Jones or so. How did they get into this rhythm that is completely shuffled rhythm in Britain? I mean, in Britain you have much more storm and cold weather and rain than here in Germany. And they make this shuffled rhythm. It doesn't suit from the geography of your psychosomatics. It doesn't suit there. How? I don't know. I do not rule out, listen, President Trump, that there was behind some political strategy. Somebody, I would not rule out that this whole thing, this whole rock music culture had been also instigated by Secret Service stuff, Secret Service, either in England and in America. I mean, this feminism certainly, this lesbian feminism certainly, it's for me it's sure it's instigated by CIA. And the CIA also instigated abstract arts very much, as you can find out also on YouTube videos. But that was during the Korean War, I think. They tried to make the people less sensitive to this cruelty, so they try to propagate more abstract arts. So in the same way, how does a CIA agent, Secret Service instigate something like that? No, not by building a not by working out rhythms and learning this music and then become famous. So I don't say that Mick Jagger is a member of the British MI5 or so, but no. These agencies, they support clandestinely. They support people in the population who are, for example, artists who are making this kind of music. So, for example, also the feminists. I would rule out that the feminists, lesbian feminists, had been supported by the CIA clandestinely. They didn't even know it. So Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones and all these groups are probably, they don't know that they had been supported and propagated. So it has, of course, has influence also on the mass media and on the music industry in general. So they can make people bring out or produce stars, or they can also suppress certain directions they don't like. So, and I think something like that worked also here in England. I don't know what purpose there was behind. Okay, they thought maybe they could. This music makes people daft, because it is more in your belly. It's not the kind of music I'm making, which is rather making me not daft. The opposite of that, making me more intelligent or more intellectually capable. But they thought if we propagate African music in among this rioting youth at that time, Vietnam War and so on in the 1960s, then this upper class in England as well as in America thought they don't become dangerous to us, to our arguments in the political sphere. They are just too stupid, and if they are even drug addicts, then they don't. They are even weaker than even the more, so they don't become a problem to us. I could imagine that this was the thinking about this, propagating this Afro-American Afro rock music. It was to make the entire population, which is the poorer population, so to speak, keep them daft. And well, I don't think they might have they by now realized that it's wasn't quite such a good idea for the human survival.